Hey guys, Rhett here. What's going on? I've been waiting to do this video now for a while, and over the course of every year, I get asked a lot of the same questions, as you might guess. And part of that is because people get a lot of bad information online. They talk to people who maybe aren't the most informed when it comes to Section 8. And anytime you deal with such a small niche in such a large environment like Section 8 is in the real estate world, it's hard coming across people that have a true understanding of A, what it is, how it works, and B, how to be successful in doing it from the investor side. So what we did was we put together a list of the top questions that I've received in 2023. I'm going to go over all of them right now. I'm going to get into detail on some of them, and it just might be a little bit easier for you after seeing this video to make decisions about Section 8 and to learn more. And maybe you have some of these questions, and if you don't have questions, you're amazing. And if you do have questions that I didn't answer here, please get into the comment section, leave them for me. That way I can do more videos like this and address the questions that maybe I didn't get to on this one. Now, over the course of a week, I answer hundreds, if not thousands, of questions for my clients. And that's what I love to do, and that's what we do, because in the way that we work together, I am going to be holding their hand every step of the way. And when you do that, you're constantly teaching people how to build foundations. And then once we build foundations, you're teaching how to get to the next level. And then at the next level, there are questions that you might not ask at the foundational level. And then as we grow and scale, the questions I get from clients of mine that have 20, 30, 40 properties are a lot different than the questions I get from clients who are working on their first one. And the nice thing is, once you do this and you do it for yourself and you start learning how to do it, you don't ever ask the same question twice, especially when you've had experience with it. So I hope this is helpful. Guys, please, as always, leave your questions, comments below, and I'll get to all of them. So question number one, what are the odds of not being able to rent out my Section 8 unit if I am able to onboard it? So say you buy a property, you buy your rental property, and you want to have your Section 8 rental. And what are my odds of being able to find a Section 8 tenant? Well, that is completely based on the city, the state, the housing authority that you're going to be working with to put the Section 8 tenant in there, and how you set that unit up. So are there enough Section 8 tenants for your unit? The answer to that is, it depends. What we do, a lot of my clients, we focus on very urban areas. The reason being, in urban areas, we have high populations. I get a lot of people all the time that say, Rhett, well, why don't we just buy a place in, middle of nowhere, Texas, where we can buy houses for 30, 40 grand? Or why can't we buy in this area, North Dakota, or this area of Wyoming? Well, the answer is the population in some of those cities is so unbelievably small that we might not get the same demand there for Section 8 than we will in some of these areas that are extremely highly populated. So it really matters where you do this. Now, I had a conversation with a client of mine about a week ago, and we were discussing a great area to do Section 8 based on the level of commerce and a very fast-growing population. The problem was there wasn't a Section 8 housing authority within 25 miles. That can be an issue, right? So again, it matters the city where you're doing it, the state where you're doing it, and the amount of Section 8 voucher holders in that area. We want to create units that drive high demand, and we want to drive a lot of excitement for those units. So part of that is my unit layout good? Is my home nice? I can't tell you with confidence that if you just put a piece of crap on the market, you're going to get your Section 8 tenant. It has to be getting a lot of demand. It has to be nice, and it has to attract people. The beautiful thing about the Section 8 program is these voucher holders can choose where they want to live. If they don't want to live in your unit, They don't have to. So you have to create a product that's good enough to bring in a tenant, but it also has to be in an area where there are a lot of voucher holders who need homes. Question number 2. What are the top 3 biggest red flags when looking to buy a Section 8 rental? Number 1, the biggest thing you need to look for is, do I have a team in that area? Okay? Do I have a team in the area where I'm trying to buy a unit? Now, when it comes to red flags, in the actual acquisition of the property, you need to have an understanding of a few things. Number 1 is the unit I'm buying overpriced. Number 2 is the unit I'm buying going to be in an area where I'm going to get high demand for Section 8. So I would say, I don't know if it's a red flag, but something on that checklist needs to be, am I buying in the right area? Number 3 is, am I buying a property that needs more rehab than I'm expecting to put into it? And then lastly, number 4, and of course the biggest red flag, and I already talked about it, is it's a huge red flag if you're planning on buying property without having your people in place. Your realtor, your lenders, your insurance agents, your contractors, and your property management. If you don't have them in place, to me, that is the biggest red flag possible. When you purchase real estate, you don't know what red flags to look for unless you've done it hundreds or thousands of times. You can have red flags pop up. I can look at a property and see 10 red flags just by looking at it. I can see chipping paint on the outside. I can see foundational cracks. I can see a bad roof. I can see water intrusion by chimneys, things that the normal eye just won't see by looking at a house. Those are all red flags to me. But a lot of them we can work through. So I would say that when you're looking to buy property, a lot of the red flags can be avoided by having the right team in place. Realtors can look and make sure when you get to the point where title companies are looking and checking and making sure that titles are clear and marketable. If you don't have the right realtors and you don't have the right title companies, things can fall through the cracks. If you don't have the right contractors, they don't know what to be looking for. They don't know how to build the units out for Section 8. That's a red flag. So the biggest red flags are always going to revert back to the team, because red flags are going to pop up in every single part of this. You have to know which red flags you can put down and move through and which ones are going to cease the process. Question 3, do you invest in anything other than Section 8? If so, what? And yes, I do. I invest in other things. I've put videos on this channel of some of the other things that I invest in. I invest in the 2 pulls, and I've talked about this on the channel a few times, guys. And what I like to do is I like to invest in Section 8 where the money's guaranteed with low-income renters, where all of their rent is subsidized. And then I like to invest in the other end of that spectrum, which is high net worth individuals. So the reason I like to do that is because in a time like right now, where inflation's through the roof, the cost of living is through the roof, we're about to enter what might be World War III. There's a ton of uncertainty throughout the entire world. We have oil prices are about to skyrocket. We have interest rates at incredible highs, and we have a stock market that's plummeting. The 2 people and the 2 socioeconomic groups that are least affected by that are those who are on subsidized housing and those who are very wealthy. So I know that if I can always have renters in both of those areas, I'm going to be okay. So that's where I put a lot of my money. Everything in the middle is very difficult because everybody in the middle fluctuates. Those are the people that are hit hardest when things in the world are uncertain. When prices go up and people in the middle here, this is where they have trouble making ends meet. I don't want to be the one who owns the unit if they can't make rent. Here, with my Section 8 portfolio, the money's guaranteed. I don't have to worry about that. Here, with my high luxury portfolio of high luxury rentals, I don't have to worry about that either because the individuals I rent to have very high net worths and make a lot of money. It doesn't matter when the price of eggs goes up a couple dollars or the price of milk goes up a couple dollars. So that's where I like to invest, guys. I talk about a lot of the big developments that I do on the channel. I do that as well. That's a lot of high risk stuff. And what allows me to do that is the comfort and the safety I have by investing in the 2 polar opposites, nothing in the middle. Question number 4, can you buy Section 8 rentals if you're not a U.S. citizen? Absolutely. I have clients in Dubai, Japan, China, South Korea, London, all throughout the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, and Canada, and Turkey. And if you're a client of mine and I forgot where you're investing from, I apologize. But the reason I say that is I have a lot of clients that have never even stepped foot in the United States. We are able to do this no matter where you live. And the ability to do that, again, is going to be based on the team that you have. Do you have lenders that are going to be willing to work with you as a foreign national investing in the United States? Do we have the right people set up? Do we have the right attorneys and accountants on board that are going to be able to set up what needs to be set up if you are an out-of-country investor or a foreign national? Because the tax system is very different depending on where you're from. So if you don't have the opportunity to get into Section 8 in your countries, because of course Section 8 is only specific to the United States, reach out to me, guys, and we'll get you all set up even if you're a foreign national. Question number 5. What do you do when tenants bring mice, cockroaches, and bed bugs? Very interesting, and this is a very popular question, which I never would think of, because in all the years I've been doing Section 8, I have never had a Section 8 tenant bring in bed bugs. I have never had a Section 8 tenant bring mice or cockroaches. Most times, if you do buy a crappy house that has been vacant for a long period of time, it can have mice, it can have cockroaches. I also know some beautiful homes that still have mice, or homes in the city, or luxury apartments in downtown cities all across the United States can still have cockroaches. So bed bugs, that is something that tenants can bring. I've never had a unit ever in my life where a tenant has brought bed bugs into it. If they did, we would take care of it. And as far as cockroaches and mice go, they're around. They're everywhere. Doesn't matter where. I've never had a tenant bring them specifically to a unit. Question number 6. Would you recommend a DSCR loan? This is a really good question. And the kind of financing that you get depends on you. This is not something, I would not set up a DSCR loan for everybody. I am always going to want to go conventional first. And the reasons why: conventional loans are much easy to get out of. And what I mean by that is they're much easier to be refinanced. Oftentimes, there are not prepayment penalties on conventional loans. DSCR loans, almost 100% of the time, have prepayment penalties. Now, you can change what the prepayment penalty schedule looks like, but if you do change it, it's going to cost you more money. Conventional closings on conventional loans are going to be cheaper than DSCR loans, and the rates are going to be better than DSCR loans. Anytime we opt for private money, which is a DSCR loan, it's always going to be more expensive than conventional. Now, if you don't want to go conventional for whatever reason, we have the best lenders in the country that specialize in DSCR, and we'll set you up with those, but only if it makes sense for you. Question number 7. How much is too expensive to pay for a property manager? This is a really good question. A property manager is debatably the most important part of what we do here, and what you do as an out-of-state investor or as an in-state investor that doesn't have time to manage your properties. They are your first and last line of defense. So they're the ones that are getting the phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning when a toilet's running. They're the ones that are dealing with your case, that are dealing with tenants' caseworkers. They're the ones that are handling all the maintenance. They're handling all of the payments from Section 8. They're dealing with issues. They're on their schedule. They're making sure that they file for yearly rent increases. Property managers, especially for Section 8, where there's more paperwork and more government guidelines that have to be abided by, they're worth their weight in gold. So what is too much? Now, I would say that the going average for your normal Section 8 property manager is about somewhere between 10 and 12%. Now, you might be saying, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Well, when you consider what the average Airbnb property manager charges, which I live here in Nashville, the average is somewhere between 18 and 22%. 10% sounds like a bargain. Now, with a normal cash tenant, usually you see rates between 5.5% and 8%. So with Section 8, it's a little higher because the work is considerably higher. With a normal cash tenant, you don't need to deal with the government. You don't need to deal with caseworkers. You don't need to deal with Section 8 inspectors. You're not filing yearly rental increases every year. It is a lot more labor intensive when you have a Section 8 tenant. So therefore, property managers, they have to work harder, and a lot more of their time goes into that, especially once a year when you're filing for your yearly increase. So it's a constant, it's constant hard work from your property manager, which rationalizes the extra percentage points. Anything less than 10%, guys, if someone's offering that to you, I'd be a little bit wary, because that means they're working really hard and not making a lot of money. And remember, in order for this to work for you, everybody on your team, your property management companies, your lenders, your insurance companies, your contractors, everybody needs to win, the tenants especially. If someone on your team is not winning, it's not going to function right. We have to make sure that everybody is paid, that everybody makes money, and that way when you pick up the phone and you expect to talk to your property manager, they're there for you. Question number 8. What was the worst Section 8 eviction you've ever had? To be honest with you, I've never had a Section 8 eviction. I've had tenants that when I've had hundreds of properties at one time, I've said, hey, this is not going to work. Usually, if that's the case, you find out pretty quickly. And what you can say is, hey, this is not going to work. I'll give you to the end of the week. Otherwise, we're going to get in touch with Section 8, and we are going to find some recourse. Where at the beginning of my Section 8 investing career, when I started doing this over 10 years ago, I made mistakes. I didn't use property managers. I put people in units that had no business being in there. And just like cash tenants, Section 8 tenants are the same. You have to make sure you're getting good people to put in units. It's not about how fast you can fill them. It's about the quality of human. It's the same exact thing. As a matter of fact, I've had a ton of evictions with cash tenants. Never, not one time with a Section 8 tenant. When you deal with the Section 8 program, you can go to the caseworkers. You can file an issue with Section 8 and say, look, this person destroyed my property. Or you can file a grievance, is the word I'm looking for, with Section 8. And you can basically tell them, hey, this person ruined my property, or this person behaved in a way that violated the terms of the lease. And Section 8 will come down hard on that tenant. And when you have Section 8 looking over everything your tenant does, it protects you. And it makes sure that the tenant doesn't destroy the unit. It creates incentive for that tenant to do right by you. And that's one of the most important parts of the Section 8 program. Section 8 tenants know that. And they know that a lot of times this program for them, their voucher, is extremely important. They're not going to do anything to jeopardize that. So whenever I have had an issue, and it's been a very, very long time since that's happened, I'll always go to the caseworker first, and the caseworker will always get in touch with the tenant and explain to them how how important of a situation it is, and they will leave every single time without you having to file for an eviction. Evictions in Section 8 are extremely, extremely rare and can be avoided at all costs. You never have to get to a point with a Section 8 tenant where you have to evict them. If they do get evicted, they can lose their voucher forever, and they don't want to do that. Now, with cash tenants, their evictions are all the time. And I've had so many evictions with cash tenants that I don't want to deal with it. And that's one of the reasons that with Section 8, I am so heavily invested in Section 8, and that's why my clients are so successful with Section 8. We don't have to deal with that stuff. Question number 9. How guaranteed is Section 8 rental income? It's extremely guaranteed. It's the most guaranteed that you can possibly get inside of the United States. So you sign a contract with the United States federal government. That's pretty good. Usually the U.S. government has the money. And if they don't, they just print more of it, as we've seen over the last few years especially. So whatever is on the original lease that you sign with Section 8, you are going to get. It doesn't matter what happens in the world. It doesn't matter if there's a government shutdown. During a government shutdown, the U.S. government and Congress, they allocate billions and billions and billions of dollars to make sure that you get paid as a Section 8 landlord if in the event that there is a government shutdown. So pretty unbelievable, guys, that will even happen, and it does. I've had it. I've had it happen to me. I've had a portfolio of Section 8 properties through a government shutdown. I've had my portfolio through a global pandemic, through shutdowns, through economic recessions, through huge wars. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. Inflation, almost hyperinflation, doesn't matter. You get paid every single month. Question number 10. Where can I find how much Section 8 will pay in my area? This is a very important question, and I want to talk a little bit about FMR. FMR, or FMR on the HUD website, is extremely, extremely deceiving. And for those of you who go online and see HUD and look up your zip code and say, wow, I'll get $2,000 from my Section 8 tenant, you're not considering or understanding a lot of what FMR means. The number that you see on that website is before the tenants get their utility stipend. So if it says $2,000 to rent in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's $2,000, well, what Section 8 is going to do is they're going to find the average utility costs for water, electrical, and gas inside of that particular zip code for that size home. So they're going to take the bedroom count and square footage and find what the average utility cost is. So if water is $30 a month, gas is $20 a month, and electric's $50 a month, that is $100 a month. So they're going to deduct that from the $2,000, meaning the maximum that you can get is going to be $1,900 a month. Now, of course, those numbers are very low. It's usually going to be a $200 stipend that your tenant's going to get every month, or even more than that, $300 a month. So you can take that number off of that maximum, and that's then where you're starting. So then if your 3-bedroom unit checks all the boxes, is a good size, offers good amenities, and a good layout, you might then get the maximum remaining number less the utility stipend. So when it comes to finding out what Section 8 will pay in your market, the best thing to do is call the local housing authorities, speak to them directly, see what they're paying, see what they're giving for 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, and 6 bedrooms, and 1 bedrooms, efficiency units as they're called. So call them directly, see exactly what they're going to pay, and that is how you will know. Another way you'll know is if you do a lot of volume in that market. So my clients, we discuss what their budget is, and we talk about how much they want to make per month. And then based on that, we'll put them in one of the 17 cities that I have teams already operating in, where I know exactly what a 1,000 square foot 3-bedroom or a 1,200 or 1,300 square foot 4 or 5 bedroom is going to give us every single month. And when you do it that way, it's going to allow you much more efficiently to find out what kind of return on investment you're going to have prior to purchasing. I had somebody reach out to me about a month ago and say, Rhett, I bought a property in this X state, and FMR said it was $1,400, but I haven't seen one person with a voucher over $900. Well, in that area, Section 8 is going to run comps on everything around it to make sure that the actual value of rent in that unit can actually equal what the maximum they pay you is. Now remember, the numbers on that website, those are the maximums. So if the average rents in that area aren't close to that number and they can get away with paying you significantly less, they're going to. They're going to check comps for other Section 8 units wherever you buy your unit. So you have to know what other Section 8 landlords around you are also receiving for rent. That's where a lot of my clients have a huge leg up on everybody else, because I know exactly what everyone else is getting in those areas. So we can basically make our assessment because of the amount of other clients and other investors who are having a ton of success in those areas. If you're getting into an area that you want to invest in and you don't know anybody in that area who's renting Section 8 and FMR says $1,400 and you don't call the local housing authority, you might end up getting $900 or $1,000, which is going to destroy whatever cash on cash return you've already done your numbers on. And that's why it's not solely based on FMR. The HUD FMR on the government website is extremely deceiving if you don't understand what it means. So make sure before you buy that property, you're extremely well informed of what it means and how it works. Question 11, does the age of the Section 8 unit matter? Absolutely. And more so than age, condition. One thing that we do when my clients go under contract on a unit, we make sure our contractors look at a plethora of things, but among all others, foundation, roof, HVAC units. If it's brick, we look at the mortar in between. We look at if the structure is sloping, we look at joists and make sure they're not rotting underneath the homes. And if they are, we make sure we build that into our offer cost. We make sure that everything that we do when we buy a unit, we're trying to understand what kind of CapEx and what kind of deferred maintenance is going to have to come out of our pockets once we purchase the unit, not only in year 1, but in year 5, 10, 15, and 20. That's extremely important. And if you don't understand what kind of work goes into a home, you're going to lose money. Now, what does that mean? Well, a lot of times the age is going to directly impact that. So we know that if we buy an 80-year-old house in this neighborhood, we understand that the same builder built probably all the other homes in that area. In the areas that we have clients in the 17 cities that we operate in, we understand what breaks down at what age. So we know that if a client buys a house at 75 years old and that same builder built houses for 10 years leading up to that, and at year 80 and 85, we started seeing significant settlement cracks and we started seeing significant sloping in the rear back half of the house because of rotted joists, we can anticipate that for this house that the client is now buying. So the age totally matters, but even more important than the age, making sure that you have a competent contractor to give you the walkthroughs in these units, like the ones that we use who specialize in Section 8, walks through these units, has an understanding of what needs to be done for Section 8 and what doesn't, and can give you a good idea of what kind of expenses you can expect over the first decade of your unit. Question 12, how long does it take to rent your first Section 8 unit? And that's a really good question. And right now, with clients of mine, we're usually getting somewhere between 10 and 20 applicants in the first 10 to 15 days of putting a unit on the market. However, that doesn't mean we're going to have a tenant move in the first 2 weeks. What happens a lot of times is with Section 8, you're dealing with the government, so things can move a little bit slower. When things move slower, it doesn't mean we lose our tenant. So we might lock in a tenant in the first 5 days that the unit's on the market. It still might take 30 days for that tenant to move in. Once we have a tenant that we like, that we accept, we run all of our checks on our tenants, and our property management companies who specialize in Section 8 have this down to a science, where they do all of the background checks, all of the reference checks. They do everything they need. They look into a lot of these tenants' backgrounds with a fine-tooth comb and do a ton of due diligence where it's needed. And when you think about having done so many of these and having dealt with so many tenants, we can look at a tenant's background. We can look at so much information that a tenant gives us, prospective tenant, and see immediately if they're going to be a good fit or not because of the serving size that we've already done in the past. So what might not seem like a red flag to you is a huge red flag to us, or what might seem like a red flag to you means nothing to us because our serving size has been so large. We know what works and what doesn't. So back to kind of the process of this thing, but we might get a tenant extremely quickly in the process. After we line up a tenant, the Section 8 tenant then tells their caseworker that they have found a unit. They submit to us or the property management company their packet. Their packet is directly from HUD, and what that is the information about their voucher, what units they can rent, how many bedrooms they can rent. When they submit that to us and we approve it, we get with their caseworker and we work out the details of that tenant. Well, at that point, the caseworker then puts that unit, your unit, on the Section 8 inspection list. Now, in some cities, the Section 8 inspection lists are this big, and in some cities, they're from the ceiling all the way through the floor. What that means is if you go to the top of the pile, you might be waiting a long time to get your unit inspected. And that's totally normal when you think about how government entities operate. They're short-staffed, they're underpaid. So a lot of times we can wait longer periods of time to get the units inspected. Once the Section 8 inspectors come out, they pass our units. At that point, the tenants can move in. So depending on what market you're in, that can take 2 weeks, that can take 30 days, that can take 40 days. It can take a long period of time. While that tenant is waiting, they are not going to leave and go somewhere else. You've made a commitment to them and they've made a commitment to you. So however long that period is, they're going to wait and you are going to wait for them as well. Question 13. What do you do if your Section 8 tenant doesn't pay their portion of rent? So with Section 8, you have a government portion of rent and you have a tenant portion of rent. So say your rent is $1,000 a month. Depending on a few things, and this is different for every tenant, but what Section 8 is going to do is they're going to look at the tenant in the program and they're going to say, okay, this tenant makes X amount of money per year. They have this many dependents that rely on them. They might have 3 kids under the age of 5. They might have 5 kids under the age of 18. Whatever it is, they are going to get a stipend from the government. Every year, Section 8 is going to review. They're going to do a somewhat of an audit on the tenant to make sure that they're not making too much money, to make sure they can still qualify for the Section 8 housing voucher that they have. Now, part of that is going to be adjusting how much Section 8 pays. So what that means is you might get some tenants who they can get into a unit that is $1,000 a month if that's what you're asking, but they might have to pay $100 of it. Section 8 covers 90%, they might pay $100. We're going to go for tenants always who have a 100% voucher, meaning Section 8 is going to pay 100% of their rent. Sometimes we'll get tenants that pay $50 or $100, or in a very, very rare instance, maybe $150, $200. But we want to make sure that in most cases, Section 8 is paying at least 85% of that rent every single month. So what do you do when the tenant is not paying their portion is what this question's asking. And when the tenant's not paying their portion, we make sure that they understand that they owe that portion of rent. So if they don't pay their portion of rent, late fees are going to be added to their portion. Section 8 is making up a ton of their rent. We still expect them to pay that portion of rent every single month. Now, the great thing is if Section 8 is paying a significant amount of their rent, they're guaranteeing that. You are locking in that return on your investment. That's absolutely guaranteed. And like I said, we are going for tenants that are having at least 85% of a government stipend, and in most cases, it's at 100%. But again, this question is a little bit of an outlier. So if the tenant is paying their portion and does not pay it, we are hitting them with the same kind of late fees. We are on them the same way that we would be if they were a cash tenant. And another good thing about that too is if they continually don't pay, we'll get with Section 8 and we'll ask Section 8 if they can then cover the difference. And we've had that happen before where say Section 8 is covering 95% or 90% and that tenant owes us $150 a month and they miss it. They keep missing it and late fees keep piling up and they end up owing us $400, $500, $600. We'll get with Section 8 and say, look, they can't afford it. You need to come pick up the slack and pay us the back pay. And most oftentimes than not, Section 8 will say absolutely. They'll give us the back pay for that and they'll move all of it up to 100% Section 8 stipend. Question number 14. How much cash do I need to get started with Section 8? This is a really good question, and this depends on where you want to invest. On average, my clients come to me with between $15,000 and $30,000 in cash to get started with. Now, you might hear other places that you can buy Section 8 units for $2,500, $5,000. Good luck doing that. And a lot of those people end up reaching out to me after they realize that you can't do that and how hard it is to find deals that will allow you to put $2,000, $5,000 down. I'll tell you right now, there's not one lender in the country that will give investment loans where you're putting $2,000 or $5,000 down for a couple reasons. Number one, almost 100% of investment loans in the United States outside of hard money, lenders are going to require you to put down 20% minimum. The reason they do this is this. I'll put this to you this way. If you have two homes, you have a home that is the home that you have with your family, that your kids live in, and then you have an investment property. A lot of times you hear FHA loans, you hear owner-occupied loans, you can put down 3%, 5%, 10%. That's totally different from investment loans. And the reason is, in your life, if you have these two homes and one of them is providing a roof for your kids and the other one is an investment of yours, and you come across hard times, which mortgage do you think you are going to put into more importance in your life. It's obviously going to be your personal home, right? Because of that, the bank understands that if things in your life go sideways, the first property that you're going to neglect is your investment property. Because of that, they're going to require you to have some skin in the game there. So you need to always anticipate having to put down 20%. It doesn't matter if you do conventional. It doesn't matter if you do DSCR. I'm not talking about hard money. Hard money, that's for short term. We are talking about long-term Section 8 rental property. Even with hard money, when you go to refinance hard money, even if with a hard money loan that's a 12-month interest only at 14%, you have to refinance that into a long-term conventional or DSCR loan. You're still having to keep 20% down into the deal. So always, always, always think about having to pay your 20% down plus closing costs, plus any kind of rehab that it takes. So depending on my client's situation, we're going to look at what market they want to get started in. Of course, buying a property in Boston, Massachusetts, and buying a property in Northern Ohio, the entry-level costs are going to be pretty significantly different, right? So that 20%, it might be $18,000 or it might be $30,000. Totally depends on the market, but on average, my clients come to me with between $15,000 and $30,000 to get into their first units. Question number 15. Should we understand why a seller wants to sell a property? And this is a conversation that I have all the time with clients of mine about properties that they assume are good deals. And this is the question I get all the time is, why are they selling? And I'll tell you right now, that question in itself is extremely flawed. Why? Well, because people go through different phases of their lives where they need money for different things. I come across investors all the time that say, Rhett, I have a great Section 8 unit. I have to sell it. Do you have anybody interested? And I say, sure, give me some information. They say, well, it's renting for $1,400 a month, 100% Section 8. And when I was a novice investor, I used to think, well, if it's such a good deal and you're not trying to dump it onto somebody else, why are you selling it? And then I learned that people are always buying and selling properties because they're moving into different deals. They have kids going to college. They are having kids get married and they need to raise $30,000 to $100,000 in capital. They have to liquidate. I've had clients who have built large portfolios and things have happened in their personal life where all of a sudden they need money. I have had investors call me with big portfolios and say, hey, I just lost my job. I can live off my portfolio or I can raise a couple $100,000 to give my family a little security. And so they have to sell regardless of how much they love their portfolios. So it's not a good question to ask. Run the numbers for yourself. Do the due diligence for yourself. Don't worry about why the person is selling. If you do the correct due diligence and someone is trying to dump a property because there's an environmental spill or something crazy, your due diligence will turn that up. But don't question their reasons for selling because everybody has different reasons. And a lot of times they're personal. So if you find a good deal, you think it's too good to be true, you do your due diligence, every part of due diligence, and please, please, please make sure you have the right team to help you do your due diligence, and the numbers work and it seems great. The reality is the person might just be selling it because they need to raise the money to do it. And when I say raise money, I mean they need the money for themselves. They need to raise the money. It's a term you use when it comes to raising capital, selling something to raise cash. So guys, those are the top 15 questions that I have been asked over the last year. We are entering into November. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And I wanted to get these out there. I wanted to get them over to you. And please, if I missed anything, drop them into the question and drop your questions into the comment section below. I would love to make some more videos like this if you guys found this helpful. And we'll see you next time.